When did you first enter Steel Titan? A year, 2, 3 or more ago? Maybe you haven't even played it. Over the course of time, the game has played more than 25 million players. More than 210 tanks have been created. But do you know what the game looked like before? What problems the game faced? The highest peak of people in the game, the best and worst updates. I dug up all the information that could be found on the internet about the game. I'll tell you the whole history of our favorite game, Steel Titans, from the very beginning of the game's creation to how it looks today. And we'll start from the very beginning at the time of the game's creation. We'll start with the background of the game. The game was created by two people, Napo Modeler and Rat Coder. The first video I could find was created on October 2nd, 2017, 2 years before the creation of our familiar game. It was a raw idea for a game. The tanks were made in the Roblox editor and then they couldn't shoot. All that could be done was to ride on tanks, but even then they had some kind of suspension. In the next video, there was already some interface in the game and 4 test tanks. Panzer III AUSF, T-34, PZ-10, and J-Landkreuzer? Yes, the name was most likely a test one and they did not designate the tank in any way. But you knew that the real Landkreuzer was in the game on a 1-to-1 scale. You could even go into it, but it was just a model. You couldn't interact with it in any way. At the beginning of the game's creation, there was little to say about it. There was nothing in it and there was nothing to tell either. So we'll skip a bit for about 2 years when they were alpha testing. Yes, so much. The game was developed by 2 people, so it took them many hours. During this time, they worked on the tank suspension, explosion and smoke effects, map, shooting mechanics, tank health, and even penetration simulations, and much more. But the most important thing was that a Discord server was created where players could leave their reviews about the game. The game was already ready for the first test opening. On November 20th, 2019, the first test server was released. Then up to 25 players could play on the server. Now they make tanks not in the Roblox editor, but in other programs for modeling. Already then, they made 8 tanks. It is interesting that the first 2 development trees were German and American tanks. There were no Soviet tanks then, but the American development tree will come out later than the same Soviet ones. Another interesting fact, the King Tiger was developed at the same time. That is, it has been in the game files for 5 years. Why wasn't it released into the game like the T-30? It was definitely developed as an admin tank then, because there wasn't even a Tier 3 tank back then. But 4 years later, his model will be remade. I wonder why. Okay, let's go back. The developers have been refining the game. They added an interface, a hangar, and a development tree for German tanks. Now there are as many as 10 of them, but one of them is admin. If you thought that the game could be completed in a few minutes, then you are deeply mistaken. In order to research only one tank, you would need to spend thousands of points. And this is only on the first and second tiers. Therefore, the developers added a game pass for 25% research boost that remained forever. They also added the first map in the game, City Ruins. Those who played on it will believe that this is the best map in the game for camping. Previously, the game reminded me of World of Tanks, because then it was impossible to kill a tank with an explosion of the ammo rack. Then the best tank in the game according to the players was Martyr 3, because it had the highest DPS in the game. Over time, little things were added to the game, sound effects, settings, and a compass, which is not very interesting. Who really uses a compass in the game? Even then, the developers were preparing for the end of alpha testing and were developing Mark 1 for players who were testing the game. By the way, here he is on the City Ruins map for April Fool's Day. They also added private servers that we wanted for so long they were free. But after a week, the servers became paid, and then they were removed. They also wanted to add the towing mechanics, but they never added it. And here we are approaching the end of alpha testing. All players who tested the game received Mark 1, and those who tested in pre-alpha testing received FT-17. In honor of the end of alpha testing, the developers released a trailer for the beginning of beta testing, and more than 100,000 visits were reached. In honor of this, the developers increased the server size to 100 players for a while. Clearly, the server crashed due to the overwhelming number of players on a single server. On January 23rd, the game entered beta testing. With the transition to beta testing, Soviet tanks were released. They did not forget about the German tree, it was also supplemented with new tanks. Premium tanks were also added to the game. A new hangar, improved tracks, and 2 new maps. Tank Factory and Morning River were added. 400 players played the game, it was the largest online at that time. In subsequent updates, bugs were fixed and rebalanced, so we will skip this too. Then we got early access to American tanks for 800 Robux. And when buying a pass, they also gave a limited T6 tank. And then suddenly the developers started making a bunch of maps. Prokhorovka, Lakambe, Eastern Pass, Volokolomsk Highway, and Stalingrad, which at first was without snow and these are only the maps that came into the game, and they beat at least 2 maps that did not come into the game. But making maps takes a lot of time, and the game was made by only 2 people, and they needed to create a team of developers. Then they started looking for a map builder for the game. So they found Cirrus, who joined the team of developers. He and one of the alpha developers started making Tank Factory Rework. He also creates 3 more maps: Citadel, Archipelago, and Scorching Desert, which no one picks. And here we are, reaching 1 million visits. Soon the game moved on to the second part of the beta. Tank modules were added to it. It is interesting that earlier, when the ammunition rack was damaged, the damage increased 4 times. Later, it was reduced to 3.8. The next big update was adding emblems and loot boxes that could be bought for money. This is the only use of money in the game. So all that was left to do with them was to gamble in the hope of getting a legendary emblem. Gradually, old maps began to be removed from the game. So all the old maps were gone except for Slingrad. But if you look into the future, its removal is just around the corner. Another map has been in development for a long time that was supposed to replace it, but the release of this map has not yet been compiled. The developers were also going to make a remake of Morning River, but we know nothing about it except for one image. Then came an update to support phone devices. The game had more than 700 players online, the largest number of players ever. And later, American tanks became free, and now there are more than 100 tanks in the game. The game just reached 10 million, and the developers announced a trailer for Beta 2.5. Do you like building? If so, this is your favorite update that added building. It was this addition that distinguished this game from other tank games. What other game can block the entire spawn just by placing walls? Previously, there was a bug that left invulnerable ghost walls that were left forever. Beta 2.6 added a 5th tier of tanks and a limited tank VK 45.01H for 1,500 Robux. This is the most expensive thing in the game, but then the price was reduced to 900 Robux. In general, the game has as many as 6 tigers, only with different variations. There is also a Japanese one, only it is in the decoration. Beta 2.7 added a battle pass, but in fact it is not. It is just a seasonal reward that can be obtained for free by completing tasks. In the first season, there were 2 tanks, Tiger H2 and Ostwind 2. They also released early access to the UK for 800 Robux. With the purchase, they gave an exclusive tank, Tog 1. Then came the New Year discounts of 50% for all premium tanks, with the second season in which there were 3 tanks: Bazooka Jeep, Brumbar, and Brensturst. More and more players began to join the game. The game was promoted in recommendations and everything was fine. But then unexpected news came. On December 20th, 2023, Rat's account in Roblox was hacked by hackers. They stole his cookie files and lost access to the data of all players on the server. They could delete all the information of the players. The game was temporarily shut down, and they began working on the issue. Fortunately, no one lost their data. The game was gradually opened a day later, first for alpha players and then for others. This was not the first time that Rat lost his account. On May 12th, 2020, someone filed a report that Napo and Rat were under 13 years old, and their accounts were disabled for 6 days. I have never seen a more stupid account blocking. They even had to make new accounts in the Discord channel so that the person who threw the report did not raid the server. Beta 2.8. Then came the second tier of Britain and the third season with the Soviet tank Matilda 2. This was the shortest season in the game in which you only needed to get 1,000 points. And then I joined the game for the first time. And it was just in time. You see, earlier the Soviet Matilda was in the second tier, and with its armor it was impenetrable for all tanks. Also, the gun could break 2 walls with 1 shot, which allowed it to be invulnerable. This was a very strong tank. With this tank, I was able to research half of all Soviet tanks and scored 1,000 kills on it. But later it was moved to the third tier where it was very weak. Now no one plays this tank. What a pity. Beta 2.81 with the 4th season. It has 2 tanks KV-13 and KV-220. Also added Valentinovich limited loot box. Oh, that's all. Beta 2.8.2 removed the time for gear shifting. I honestly didn't notice the difference, but if they made a whole update for this, then it's very important. Beta 2.8.3 added an exclusive Valentine tank for 250 Robux and rebalance. Well, let's see what's changed here.
Wait.
Beta 2.8.4 adds third tier for Britain. Beta 2.8.5 added a mouse. Well, you know what kind of mouse? You could get it just by logging into the game for one day. Beta 2.8.6 fixed a bug with terrain gaps. Finally, Beta 2.9. And this is a very interesting update as the game made a collaboration with Wings of Glory. The essence of the event: it was necessary to complete quests in both games for 7 days. For completing all the quests in Steel Titans, they gave an exclusive alpha jet in Wings of Glory. And when completing all the quests in Wings of Glory, they gave a limited VFW tank. The collaboration was very cool and revived the game with new players. Then came Beta 2.3. We went back in time? No, it was just a typo by the developers. Beta 2.9 brought us a bunch of new emblems, made a bunch of rebalances, fixed a bunch of bugs, and added the 5th season with M4A2 and T72 GMC with a working machine gun, which was new. And in this update, we said goodbye to the old map City Ruins. It was with us for all these 5 years, so let's honor this map and have a minute of silence. If we're being honest, then yes, City of Ruins was terrible. And it was replaced by its older brother City Ruins Remake. Oh, and they also added some 4th tier of Britain. Beta 3 with Season 6, and as usual with 2 tanks, ZUT-37 and TG-1. In Beta 3.1, add a real tank for the Americans on July 4th, 2024. Just listen to how cool it is. Beta 3.2 released Season 7 with the PZ-4 Schmalturm and Ersatz M10. Beta 3.4 added a free 79 gunwagon tank for supporting the game. Beta 3.5 added the 5th tier of Britain. It's interesting that the developers wanted to make the FV4005 a regular tank that could be research. But then they changed their minds and removed it. And removed the fog on Scorching Desert. And it's cool that now you don't have to look at the screen, but it's also terrible that you can be killed across the entire map. Beta 3.6 with a new event about another game from the developers of Outrun. It was necessary to pass the marathon once a day and so on for 5 days. The result of your suffering, you were given a limited tank Chamond from the First World War. And it was well for the game, with tanks of the Second World War very unnecessary. Everyone did not like the tank as well as the event. No one could understand how to get it, and no one liked the new game from the developers. Damn. But then my favorite update came out. Christmas update. All tanks during the week had different accessories, added Christmas City of Ruins, new tank TOG2, and hangar also changed. This update was just fun. Later they made discounts of 50% all premium tanks. In my opinion, it was a very cool update that was made with love. And now we are approaching the end of Beta, who had a very long history. In the last beta added Season 8 with KV2Zs and FV4005. Afterwards, the game finished beta testing. It was a big event for Steel Titans. Obviously, they made a video about it, which is now on your screens. And it seems cool the game will continue to release updates and everything would be fine. But the team of developers began to leave the project. Rat, Napo, Cirrus, and others moved on to develop another game in another part of the Redscape Interactive group. And there is no need to blame them. They worked for years on the same game. Unfortunately, tank games do not collect many visits than shooters. And they achieved success in another game. Now more people know about Redscape Interactive, which created such wonderful games. But do not think that the game is slowly dying. The creators do not say goodbye forever. They will look after the game and help the game not to fall. They also left some developers to support the game. They already have ready materials for future updates, so big updates will definitely be in the game. The new team of developers also released cool updates. On April Fools, they released a new event with modern tanks. They gave 4 tanks to choose from: Abrams X, Challenger 2, T-14 Armada, and KF-51. They were able to play on a retro Roblox map. It is interesting that there should be another map, Crossroads. Unfortunately, it did not reach the release. I also cannot mention the 9th season with Panzer II Lukes and KV-7. So the game is actively being developed, and there was even no thought of closing or ending the game. The game has just moved to a new stage, and there is still a lot of history ahead that we should see. Thanks for watching, and to all the players of Steel Titans. You have created a history that has never been seen anywhere. And if you have not played this game yet, then quickly come in and leave a mark in history. See you soon.